Thank you for having me back for year 3. I love this place. I love coming to Banff. There's something special here about the community you've built, and it's always a pleasure to come back, so thank you for having me. I want everybody to just take a deep breath. Close your eyes, deep breath, and release. Okay. I want to tell you a story. It begins in 2007. I'm a 33-year-old brand manager working for Nokia in London. At this point, Nokia is the biggest mobile phone company on the planet. And it's about to release its new MP3 phones. And I walk into my boss's office, and I say, I've got this brilliant idea. You know how Coca-Cola owns Christmas? Slide change, please. Do you know how Coca-Cola owns Christmas? How they, over the decades, they built up this ownership of this moment in the holiday season. What if Nokia could own New Year's Eve? Think about it. It's a one time on the planet when everybody's connecting with each other. What's Nokia's brand promise? Connecting people. I've got this idea to do the world's biggest New Year's Eve party. 5 cities, 1 party, over 24 hours on New Year's Eve. And he looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I think this could be super cool. Let me go away and come back with an idea to pitch to you guys. And so 3 months later, I was standing in front of the executive board of Nokia, pitching them an idea for $30 million. $30 million for one night to throw a series of 5 consecutive parties across the planet. And these weren't small parties, by the way. This is 1 million people on Ipanema Beach. This is 1 million people in Berlin at the Brandenburg Gate. And this is with some of the biggest music superstars on the planet. The Black Eyed Peas, Rihanna, John Legend. And I'm standing there, I'm this punk kid standing in front of the board of Nokia, and to my eternal amazement, they say yes. They give me $30 million. That's the good news. The bad news is instead of giving me 18 months to plan this thing like I asked for, they said I had to do it in 6. That was the day I started chain smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I called up the only person on the planet who'd ever actually done this. He's a guy called Sir Harvey Goldsmith. Some of you may know him. He did the Live Aid and Live 8 concerts. So I call up Harvey, and we now spend the next 6 months, the most stressful 3 or 6 months of my life I've ever had, planning this thing. It's like a giant 3-dimensional puzzle. We're trying to book artists in the right sequence, in the right order. By the way, this is a global satellite broadcast to 140 countries. This was streamed live on the internet. And so it's the most complicated thing I've ever done in my life. So fast forward to 3 days out from New Year's Eve. We're so close. We've had teams of people working around the clock. And I'm in Berlin, where we've decided to set up the Global Command Center, which is basically like just an office with the words Global Command Center taped on a door. And I get a call, and this time, this first call is from the team in Hong Kong, and the call goes something like this. Hey, Af, we've had a seaquake that's knocked out the internet cables to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has no internet, and I know you're planning to broadcast this thing, but unless we can pay for some satellite airtime, your show isn't going to be seen by anybody. Okay, let's get some satellite airtime. Let's make it happen. 2 days out, I get a call. This time it's from the team in Rio de Janeiro. The call goes like this. Hey, Af, we're sitting in the mayor's office of Rio, and riots have broken out of the city of Rio, and there's a bunch of prisoners who escaped, and basically they're setting buses on fire in the streets. And the Black Eyed Peas would like an armored car escort to get to the beach. Can we have some money to pay for an armored car? Yes, fine, let's get an armored car escort. It is the day before New Year's Eve, and I'm now sitting in this fancy restaurant in Berlin with a bunch of sponsors. And my phone is in my pocket, and it starts to blow up with text messages from the German team. And there's nothing quite like Germans panicking, right? It's quite special. And the first text message is, please call us. The second is, please call us now. And the third message is my all-time favorite, just block caps. Danger is here. At which point I go, excuse me, I'm just going to take this phone call. And I go, what the hell is going on? You're not going to believe it, but for the first time in 100 years, Berlin is being hit by a hurricane. We have 100-mile-an-hour winds, and we have to de-rig everything down this 1-mile stretch in front of the Brandenburg Gate so people don't get hit by sheets of flying equipment, and put it up again tomorrow in time for the show. Can we have some money to pay for, the rest? Yes, absolutely, let's make it happen. And I put the phone down and I go, God, you have sent me seaquakes. You have sent me riots. You have sent me hurricanes. Are you trying to tell me something? Are you trying to tell me that this is a terrible idea? And so we've managed to fix all of these problems, and the next night, I'm sitting in this control room watching this bank of TVs as the show starts to unfold. And it starts in Hong Kong in the east, goes to Berlin, goes to Mumbai, Berlin, Rio, and New York. And this is actually a picture of, this is what 1 million people on Ipanema Beach look like. I'm sitting there watching this going, what just happened? And one of my favorite moment actually is John Legend was playing at that concert, and he comes out on stage, and it's just him and a piano, and he sings one of my favorite songs, Ordinary People, and the whole crowd sings along. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. We did it. I go to sleep that night. I'm so exhausted. I haven't slept in months. I think I slept like 15 hours, and I wake up the next morning in this hotel room in Berlin. And I'm looking back at this roller coaster of 6 months. And I'm going, we did it. We bought it in on time. Nobody died. Nobody had any problems. It was on budget. It was on time. And I looked inside myself, and I should have been feeling joy, right? Or exhilaration or something like that. But do you want to know what I felt when I looked inside? I felt nothing. I didn't feel anything. In fact, as the weeks and months went past, I started to think, did I just blow $30 million of money on my ego as a marketer? I look at where Nokia is today. It's no longer the biggest mobile phone brand in the world. It's barely even an ingredient brand in Microsoft at this stage. And I think about how I could have spent that money differently. Could I have spent it in a way that helped Nokia future-proof itself? Could I have spent it in a way that actually had some societal impact as well? That was part of the journey that brought me here to speak to you today. This quest to find a more meaningful way of practicing our craft of marketing as well. Years passed, and I tried to push this empty feeling away by working even harder. I reached for the next promotion, reached for a bigger paycheck, and then after several years, I became a father to this guy. This is my son, Nuri. He is sporting a rather amazing case of bedhead here. And one day I was going out the door on a business trip, and he said something to me. He said, "See you next week, Dada." And the way he said it, in such a matter-of-fact way, it kind of broke my heart. Like he'd gotten used to me going away for so long that it meant nothing to him. And a week was a rather long time in his life. "See you next week, Dada." And I thought about it on this trip. And when I got home, I felt so guilty. I did what all guilty dads do. I took him to the park so we could just have some father-son time. Now, given that this park was February in New York City, this may have been a terrible idea. The park was bitterly cold. There was like black garbage bags just floating around in the wind. And there's nobody at the park, and Nuri is so bored, he's just pushing his own stroller around the perimeter of the park. Like. It's not good parenting skills. Anyway, we're sitting there on this park bench, and I turned to him and go, hey, I'm really sorry I had to go away for so long. I really missed you. And he said, that's okay, Dada. I missed you. I know your work is important. And then we sat there in silence for a moment, and then he turned to me and said, so what do you do? And in that moment, that emptiness came back. My throat was frozen, like the park around us. I couldn't get any words to come out of my mouth. And I realized I didn't have a good answer for him. I realized I didn't know how to tell that little boy that I'd missed a week of his life just so I could help people buy more stuff. I felt guilt. I felt shame. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want him to see me cry. And so all I could do in that moment was just give him a big hug. But inside me, I vowed that something had to change. A few weeks later, I'm hanging out with my friend Jeff Benjamin. Now, Jeff is one of the most awarded creative directors in advertising, so I thought he could help me figure some of this stuff out. And we get to Jeff's place, and he's watching this movie, Deep Impact. Do you guys know this movie? It is one of those cheesy 90s movies where Morgan Freeman is the president of the United States, and it's about this giant asteroid hitting the Earth. And Jeff and I are sitting there watching this movie, and there's a scene where they put the best minds of a generation into this mountain shelter, right? And they're putting in doctors and engineers and scientists and teachers to protect them from the effects of the asteroid. And Jeff turns to me and says, hey, Af, you know who they're not putting in that mountain? Marketers. I thought to myself, he's right. And I imagined myself like going through the crowds and going up to the top of the mountain and seeing the guy with the clipboard standing there checking people off. Name, Afdhel Aziz. Profession, marketing. Why should you be in this mountain? I throw really good parties. I think the secret is we all want to do work that gets us into the mountain. So I decided to go and try and find some people who did that. The next day, I was at work. I cleared my schedule. I was sitting in this little phone booth, wondering where to start. And so I did what all self-respecting marketers do. I went on Google. And the first question I asked myself was, am I alone? Am I the only person who thinks that what they do is fundamentally not as meaningful as it should be? And I found this survey from Gallup. Gallup did a poll of 140 countries, and they asked people to say, are you happy and engaged at work? And I want you guys to shout out what percentage you think said yes. Loud, I can't hear you guys. 20? 45? 12? Anything higher than 45? 15%. 15% of people said, yes, I'm fulfilled and engaged at work. That's 85% of people who said, no, I'm not. All right, now it's time for some audience participation. In a second, if you feel like you're part of the 85%, I want you to stand up. I'm just kidding, I wouldn't do that to you. This guy over here was freaking out, by the way. Like, it was like 85% did not like what they do. Gallup called it a shocking waste of talent, and I agree. So I asked myself a second question. What do those 15% of people have in common? And here's the answer I found. These three things. So this is from Dan Pink, an amazing book called Drive, The Science of What Motivates Us. It's these three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So we'll talk about each of these in turn. Autonomy is the ability to do self-directed work, to be independent, to not have anybody micromanage you. And I thought, oh, I had a lot of autonomy at Nokia. I had $30 million worth of autonomy at Nokia. I kind of understood that one. Mastery. Mastery is being expert in your craft, feeling pride that you're good at what you do. And I thought, okay, I was able to bring this pretty complex program in on budget, on time. I think I had some mastery in what I did. And then this word, purpose. Purpose was the one that caught me by surprise. Maybe that's what was missing. I started researching this word, purpose, and I found it's common to every culture on the planet. The Japanese call it ikigai. The French call it raison d'être. It really means your reason for being. Why are you on this planet, and what are you going to do with the time you have on it? Maybe this is what was missing. The best story about purpose I ever heard featured this guy with the amazing hair. He's Sir Christopher Wren, one of Britain's most preeminent architects. He's the guy who built St. Paul's Cathedral. And the story goes that one day Sir Christopher decided to walk around and talk to some of his laborers, and decided to do it anonymously, maybe just by removing the wig. And he's walking around and he's talking to some of the laborers who are working on this thing. And he meets the first laborer here and he goes, excuse me, sir, why are you here? This first laborer is just sitting here chopping away at a bit of stone and looks up and goes, why am I here? Just cutting this bit of stone. That's why I'm here. Undeterred, he keeps walking. And he meets a second laborer who's there, sitting on a wall just eating a sandwich, looking off into the distance. Excuse me, good sir, why are you here? Why am I here? Getting 5 shillings a week? And then he walks on. He sees a third laborer there, meticulously cutting this bit of stone to make it fit into this wall. And he asks again, excuse me, sir, why are you here? And that guy stands up. He wipes the sweat from his brow. He goes, why am I here? I'm helping Sir Christopher Wren build this magnificent cathedral as a monument to God. That's why I'm here. That guy had found out what it means to have purpose at work. He could see how his task, however humble, laddered up to something bigger than himself, something that would outlast him. Purpose. This word kept circling in my head. One rainy evening, I found myself at home in Brooklyn, deciding whether to watch Game of Thrones. And then I saw this talk advertised by this guy, Justin Dillon, about his book, A Selfish Plan to Change the World. And I thought to myself, a selfish plan to change the world? That guy wants to get into the mountain. And so I got my ass off the couch, and I went out in the rain, and I met Justin Dillon. Justin is a pretty incredible guy. He's a musician, a filmmaker, and he's an activist on the issue of slavery, modern-day slavery. And Justin told me that evening, there are 40 million people in the world today who are still slaves. And the definition of a slave is they're in a job where they don't get paid, and they can't leave on pain of death or punishment. There's 40 million people in the world. That's more than at any other time in human history, believe it or not. And Justin has made it his life's mission to end it in our lifetime. The first thing he did was create this thing called slaveryfootprint.org. It's a website, it's live now, anybody can go to it, and you input what your consumption habits are, and it will tell you how many slaves work for you. Not if, how many slaves work for you. Because here's a dirty little secret. Buried deep in so many supply chains around the world is slavery. The most common example to think about is coltan, which is a mineral that is mined in the Congo and used in mobile phones. It's very often mined by forced labor. 30 million people went to this website. He worked with the Obama White House, with the Clinton State Department. He raised a tremendous amount of awareness about this problem. But he realized awareness wasn't enough. Because here's the problem. The total amount of money that nonprofits have to battle slavery is in the tens of millions. The total amount of money that the global slavery trade creates is in the tens of billions. So Justin realized he needed to have a different strategy. And his approach changed when he met this guy. This is Kelly Miller. He's a vice president at SAP, the world's largest enterprise software company. And Kelly and Justin met, and they realized they each had a different part of the solution to the problem. I'm going to let Kelly tell you in his own words what happened next. If we could play the video, please.
I am very grateful because every morning I get to get up and drive to work and work at a company that is making an impact not only with our customers, but making an impact on the world. SAP is the largest enterprise software company in the world. I run the North American market unit for financial services for our supply chain and procurement business, which is called Ariba. Ariba is unique because we have the world's largest e-commerce network. So think of Facebook, eBay, and Amazon for business, only much bigger. We do almost $1 trillion worth of commerce. So we have the scale and reach where we're impacting commerce all over the world. In 2012, I was at a conference and they were talking about this End It thing, which turned out that they were bringing awareness to this issue of slavery in the world. This guy started talking about how he wanted to end forced labor in the supply chain. And so I'm thinking, if I could somehow take what he's doing, productize it, and get it onto our network, potentially 2 million companies could be exposed to these type of ideas. So I got in touch with Justin, and our first conversation was over 2 hours long. And the reason that it was such a long conversation is because it was, from the very beginning, it was obvious that this was a perfect marriage of what he had and what my company had. So Justin had done the research, compiled the data, and had everything that was necessary information-wise for companies to actually figure this out. But he had no mechanism, no platform to deliver it. We decided to engage, we decided to take action, and we started this process of a 3-year journey where we engaged some of the world's largest global brands that are our customers. And we got input on what do you need? What do you need to be empowered and equipped to help end slavery in the world? And the result of that is the Freedom Tool. In its simplest form, the Freedom Tool is a dashboard. It's a reporting engine that takes a customer's spend data. So what are they buying? What area of the world are they buying it? And how much are they spending? And it loads it into this database, and we are able to report on where they may have problems with slavery, where they may have suppliers that are known offenders, etc. So it is a source of information to empower companies and help them make decisions and take action. I actually do imagine a world without forced labor because the approach has changed. We are now in a position to actually see change happening in the world. And it all started from End It making me aware of an issue, and then me focusing and thinking about that issue, and then taking action. So let's keep shining a light on slavery.
Yeah, that video inspires me every time I watch it. So I heard about this and I was like, Justin, you gotta put me in touch with Kelly. And I called him up a couple of days later. And Kelly told me how they had now embedded this software, the software that Justin had in Slavery Footprint, into this enterprise software tool. And some of the largest corporations on the planet, like Boeing, like Target, are now using it to stamp out forced labor in their supply chains. They're taking one of the most hidden parts of a company, procurement, and they're making chief procurement officers feel like superheroes. Because they can go home to their kids and say, here's what I did today. I tried to end forced labor. I said, you got to tell me how you did this, because this is some Jedi stuff. And Kelly said, well, I used my superpower. And I was like, your superpower, what's that? And he said, everyone's got superpowers in a company. Some people might be really good at leading teams. Some people might be really good at problem solving. Your superpower is what your teammates say, oh yeah, she's really good at that. That's her superpower. And he said, I realized my superpower was being able to frame the problem in the right way. I didn't talk to SAP about the issue of ending slavery. I talked to SAP about how amazing it would be to have all 2 million of our customers have ethical supply chains, the value of that. Kelly said, I was able to sell the benefit, not the problem. That was his superpower. The last thing he said as he hung up the phone to me was, all I know is learning to use my superpower helped me do some of the most meaningful work of my life. So I thought to myself, we're onto something, superpowers. But I knew it wasn't enough. A few weeks later, it's spring in New York, and some friends of mine came to visit. So we rented these city bikes, and we're going down the river. And we're having a great time, and the breeze is blowing in my face. And I remember something my friend Alyssa told me about this city bike program. This is Alyssa, by the way. Alyssa was the head of creative and media at Citibank when this program happened. And I went back and talked to her about the story, and the story is quite an incredible one. Back in 2008, Citibank was one of the most hated brands on the planet. They had taken the biggest bailout of any bank after the global financial crisis. In fact, a common nickname for them was Shitty Bank, especially in New York City. In 2011, the mayor's office in New York City comes to them and says, hey, we want to create this new bike share scheme. We're looking for a title sponsor. The price tag is $41 million over 6 years. Now, Citi had never made a multi-year commitment of that magnitude before, and so there was a lot of resistance internally about doing this deal. But Alyssa and a small group of her fellow New Yorkers got together and just pushed this through because they were passionate about turning around the reputation of that brand in its hometown and passionate about helping their fellow New Yorkers as well. The results of Citibank are pretty incredible. First of all, I think it's the single greatest media buy in the history of New York City. I've bought media in New York, and $41 million doesn't get you very far. They got every single street corner for 6 years. These bikes are everywhere. People are riding them, Instagramming, tweeting them. Citibike has become a verb. When you ask somebody, how did you get here? They go, I citibiked it. Think about how powerful that is for a brand to become a verb. Citi's own internal polling data showed 18% jumps in brand consideration and relevancy. Citi is a brand for me. Citi is a brand I trust. Citi is a socially responsible brand, all directly tied to this program. And Alyssa said the most important thing was it made people proud to work for this company. She said people used to stop me in corridors and go, I want to work on this project with you. It makes me proud to come to work to have this project. So I asked Alyssa for some advice about how to do work like this, and she said this: the way to find happiness in your job is to align it with your passion. When Alyssa said passion, I knew she didn't mean hobbies like singing or dancing or music. She meant what makes you passionate as a citizen. What breaks your heart? What gets you mad? What makes you want to get up in the morning and do something about it? That's what makes you passionate. For Alyssa and her team, that was his passion, to help the city of New York. So I had another idea, another word, passion. I felt like I was beginning to piece this puzzle together, but it still wasn't all coming together really clearly. And then, a few months later, it was a hot summer evening in Brooklyn. I was at an event, and I met this lady, whose name is Dawn Yancey. Dawn is incredible. She's one of those women who has a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. And she works at a place called Consumer Reports. And when we were talking, she said, I've been there for 30 years. I'd never heard of anybody being anywhere for 30 years. And I said, what makes this place so special? Why have you been there for 30 years? And she said, well, why don't you come and visit us and see? So, I don't know if you have Consumer Reports here in Canada, but in the US, you probably know it as the thing your dad buys when he wants to get a new freezer. It's reviews of products and things like that. But Consumer Reports, when I dug into it, I realized actually had an amazing history. It is a 100-year-old nonprofit which has been fighting for the rights of consumers from the get-go. This is the front page of Consumer Reports in 1963 when they were battling the tobacco companies. This is the front page when they were battling auto manufacturers to get seatbelts in cars. Consumer Reports is the reason you have seatbelts in cars, because it took the auto manufacturers to task for it. Today, the threats are new. This is about privacy and cyber surveillance, but they're still on this crusade. Consumer Reports is to consumer rights what the ACLU is to civil rights. And so one day I went to visit these guys in their office in New Jersey. I had the privilege of meeting the men and women who work there. And I asked them this question: why do you come to work here? And the answer they gave me was incredible. Every single man and woman, whether they'd been there for 2 days or 30 years, they all said the same thing. We are here to protect people. We are here to keep people safe from products that might be unsafe or predatory loans or whatever else. That's what unifies us. We're here to keep people safe. Consumer Reports' purpose is to create a fairer, safer, better world. Everybody at that company had their purpose in sync with that organization. I asked Dawn to tell me what made it so special, and she said this: we are a voice for the voiceless. Everybody here is there in service to those folks who can't speak up for themselves. That's what we do. That's why we're proud to drive into the car park every morning. And that's when another piece of it clicks into place for me. Purpose is never about yourself. Purpose is always about being of service to something bigger than yourself. So at that point, I had all these ideas floating around my head, but I felt like I didn't know how the jigsaw puzzle fit together. So I spoke to my friend, Bobby Jones, and I explained the problem to him and said, I think I know somebody you should talk to. I've been doing a lot of work on finding my own personal purpose, and I've got a coach who's really good. All he does is help people find purpose and meaning. In fact, you may know him from your time at Heineken. He used to run an advertising agency that Heineken used. His name is True Pettigrew. And I went, True Pettigrew, True Pettigrew. This True Pettigrew? This guy? The guy who celebrated his 40th birthday party at the Versace mansion in Miami. That who got Belvedere Vodka to sponsor his 40th birthday party in Miami. That True Pettigrew is helping people find meaning and purpose. And Bobby said, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that party, because at that party, something changed for True. He overheard another guest describing him. And the guest said, yeah, I'm at True Pettigrew's birthday party. You know True, he's the guy who drives the Mercedes SL 550. You know, the guy who has the blinged out Breitling watch? And True realized that he was being described in terms of his consumption. He was reduced to what he consumed, not his contribution to society. That was a turning point for True. This is True now, by the way. The gentleman on the far left. Quite a contrast. True lives in the small town of Cary, North Carolina, and he's doing amazing work in building bridges in the community. A large part of the work he does is, in the wake of all those tragic shootings, he's trying to build bridges between the African American community and the police in his town and all over the country as well. He's doing amazing work. And he helps people find purpose. So I asked Bobby to put us in touch, and I called up True and I said, True, I'm lost. I've had all these conversations, and I told him how I'd met Alyssa and Dawn and Kelly, and I said, I don't know where I'm going. And True listened to me and said, I know you're lost. A lot of people are. I can help you. All it's going to take is 3 little letters. But before I help you, let me ask you a question. Are you ready to do some of the most introspective soul searching of yourself you've ever done? Are you ready to go to the people who love you, your friends and family, and ask them to tell you what they really think of you? Are you ready to do some of the most intense work of your life? And I was like, no, I'm not ready to do that at all. But I had to say yes. I had to say yes for my son. I had to say yes for myself. I couldn't deal with that emptiness anymore. And so I said yes to True. And True said, all right, when you're lost, what's the first thing you do? If you're lost in your car or on the street, what do you turn on? You turn on your GPS, right? I was like, yes, okay. Well, when you're lost in life, what you need to do is turn on your GPS to find your purpose and get to where you need to get to. Let me explain. The G stands for what are your gifts? What are the things that you're just naturally good at, the things you were born with? When your friend Kelly was talking about his superpowers, that's what he meant, those gifts. The P stands for passion. What are the things that make you want to get up in the morning and do something? What makes you mad? What breaks your heart? Just like your friend Alyssa and the story you told me about Citibank. And the S stands for, you guessed it, how can you be of service? Just like Dawn and those people at Consumer Reports. Just like that third bricklayer in the story of Sir Christopher Wren. How can you be of service to something bigger than yourself? GPS. Your purpose lies at the intersection of what your gifts are, what your passions are, and how you can be of service to others. Clicked. It made sense to me. But now I had an even bigger problem. I said to True, well, that's great, but what's my purpose? What are my gifts? What are my passions? Who am I of service to? And yes, we had 2 or 3 months of the most intense soul-searching work I've ever done on myself. And at the end of it, I figured it out. Do you want to know what my purpose is? It's this. It's to be with you here today. I realized I had a gift of storytelling. And I realized that I wanted to help people like me who are stuck in the same place, who are trying to find meaning and purpose in their work. And I wanted to be of service to all of you in this audience here today. That's why I flew thousands of miles to come here to Banff to be with you this Thursday afternoon. This moment is worth more to me than $30 million. And when I fly home to my son tomorrow, I think I can tell him I'm proud of this day's work. This is my purpose. So I ask all of you, what are your gifts? What are your passions? How can you be of service? Because I'll tell you something else. This moment is a gift. I travel around the world, I speak, I consult with companies. I'll tell you right now, we have never been in a moment in human history like right now, when people want the companies and corporations in their lives to stand up for something bigger. Your consumers want it, your employees want it, your investors want it. This moment is a gift. We are in a moment where your values drive your value. I've studied the most successful companies on the planet, and I'll tell you this secret. It doesn't matter if that company has a great noble purpose if the people inside it haven't unlocked theirs. That's why we need you, the leaders of today, to use your hearts, not just your brains, to get involved. if you decide to go on this journey, here's 3 pieces of advice that I've learned. Number 1, start with what you have. Don't worry if you don't have $41 million like Alyssa. The fact that you're in this room here today means you have access to more resources than you need. Start small, experiment, find ways to bring that purpose into your work. Number 2, clarity follows action. When I started this journey, I had no idea where it would lead me. Follow your intuition. Listen to the little voice in your head, and it'll become clearer every step of the way. The greatness is in the journey. And finally, and most important, find your allies. You don't have to do this alone. Go find the one other person in your team or in your office who feels the same way that you do. Look to your left. Look to your right. It could be the person sitting next to you right now. I'm going to leave you with the quote that powers my life today. It's a quote from Mark Twain. Some of you may be familiar with. The 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. I hope today gets you one step closer to doing work that people come up to you in corridors and say, I want to work with you on that. I hope today gets you one step closer to doing work that gets you into the mountain. And I hope today gets you one step closer to the day you find out why. This moment is a gift. How will you start today? Thank you.